Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat and today I am talking about recent NetGalley arcs that I received. They're all by Black authors and they all feature queer relationships or characters. So I'm just going to tell you the 4 books and rank them briefly, and then I will check in with you whenever I finish one of them, because what I have learned from 2020 is that I am a horrible vlogger. I forget to pick up the camera. I just don't do it. So I'm not going to try this year in 2021. Either I'm going to introduce you to a book or I'm going to wrap it up and tell you what I think of it, and nothing in between. So let's get into the 4 books by date that they're released. So the first one that I want to talk about is Femme Like Her by Fiona Zedde. This is by Red Hills Publishing. And this was published December 8th, 2020. So it is a really recent release that came out last year. And this says, Nalia has certain rules. She only dates studs and races her car. She always leaves exes in the past where they belong, but one ex, her only femme mistake, comes back into her life, bringing passion and an explosive secret. Can Nalia throw out her rule book and have a real chance at love? So I think it sounds really interesting. I don't think I've ever read a lesbian romance where they refer to the characters as a stud or femme. So this will be a first for me. I'm very excited. Next published is Mouths of Rain, an anthology of Black lesbian thought by Briona Simone Jones, who is the editor, and this is published by the New Press, and it is out February 23rd, 2021. So again, this is absolutely perfect for FF February, which is also Black History Month. I am beyond thrilled. Black lesbian literature and Black lesbian thought is not often what I read. If I'm going to read something where it's female-female, usually the character is bisexual or pansexual, because those are identifiers that I have used personally in the past, but strictly lesbian is not the section of literature that I am that familiar with, so I'm very keen to get to this. Also, the cover is just beautiful. And then we also have Learned Reactions by Jace Ellis. This is out by Carina Press on March 9th, 2021. And this is an MM small town romance. So it says, Carlton Monroe is finally getting his groove back. After a year playing dad to his nephew and sending him safely off to college, it's back to his bachelor ways. But when his teenage niece shows up on his doorstep looking for a permanent home, his plan comes to a screeching halt. Family is everything, and in the eye of social services, a couple makes a better adoptive family than an overworked bachelor. Enter a fake relationship with his closest friend and him trying to keep the family together. Excuse me, what? I love so many of the tropes in there, like the suddenly having to take care of someone in the family. I love the trope of the fake dating, and I also love the small town vibes. I'm very excited about this one. But I'm not gonna lie, the one that I am most excited about is Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon. This is published by Farrar, Straus & Giroux, out May 4th, 2021. I screamed when I was approved for this arc. I don't know how, I don't know what kind of luck, like did I step on a bunch of 4-leaf clovers? What happened? I was so shocked. I woke up and I did like a happy dance. So this is following Vern, who is 7 months pregnant and desperate to escape the religious compound where she was raised. She flees into the woods and gives birth to twins, planning to raise them far away from the outside world. But even in the forest, she is a hunted woman. Forced to fight back against the community that refuses to let her go, she unleashes incredible brutality far beyond what a person should be capable of. Her body racked by inexplicable and uncanny changes. It says it is a genre-bending work of gothic fiction. Here, monsters aren't just individuals, but entire nations. I'm so freaking ready for this book. I can't wait to start it. Cannot wait to start it. Need it right now. So before I get to the reading section, I'm just going to rank these in order that I think I'm going to like them. So obviously, if you can't tell, I'm putting Sorrowland right at the top here. I think it's going to be my favorite. Then I think Learned Reactions next, just because of the fake dating my best friend thing. Then I'm gonna say Femme Like Her in third place, just because I think Mouths of Rain, because it is an anthology, which is kind of like a short story collection. Those are generally not as highly rated for me because not everyone is as strong as the next, if that makes sense. I'm so excited for these Black queer books. Let's get into it. My next update with you will be when I finish one of them. Okay, so without further ado, I will speak to you then. Bye. Okay, so I am just checking in a few days later. I finished Femme Like Her by Fiona Zedde. This was a female-female lesbian romance, and you are gonna definitely want to pick it up if that sounds at all intriguing to you. We are following two female main characters, one who is very femme, and she's out one day with her friend when this other woman who's also femme comes up to her and basically is doming all over the place and is like, I want to take you out on a date. Like, let me take you out on a date. I will like lavish all of this stuff upon you, and I just really want to get to know you. And our main character long ago decided that due to a past relationship, she wasn't interested in femme like lesbian relationships, but they do go out and things go from there. So this I would recommend for people who like Black FF love. One of the characters is Black bisexual and has like big dom energy. It said in the book big clit energy, and I was like, yes. The other one is a Black lesbian femme who's very nervous about love. They have off the charts chemistry. Like some of the sex scenes, I was like, oh, whoa, okay, whoa, my god, it's so spicy. It's the kind of sex scenes where like, I feel like I'm intruding on the moment. I'm like, should I just leave you guys alone and you can get it on without me, because whew, it's hot in here. So highly recommend it based on sexual chemistry and tension. Something that was interesting was that they were discussing queer acceptance or the lack thereof in Jamaican culture, because one of the main characters is from Jamaica. Her family's Jamaican, but they live in America, and they talk about how in Jamaica they do not accept like queer people unless you pass and do it like behind closed doors. I just thought that was something that was very interesting. The author herself is actually Jamaican, so I thought that was a very interesting thing to put in the novel that I hadn't been aware of previously. So let's talk about the things that didn't work for me, and keep in mind they are very minor things, because I still give this book 4 stars, and it's one of the best lesbian FF romances I've ever read. So this did rely on the misunderstanding trope, which is one of my like least favorite things in romances. I guess you could say miscommunication, misunderstanding. I'm just like, guys, talk it out. Like in a real relationship, like let's just have a adult conversation. And then there was also this weird overhanging work drama for the main character, and it was never part of the plot or resolved. So I didn't really think it needed to be in there at all. I was like, okay, weird flex, but you do you. And then also there was a word like crazy to describe a woman being abusive in a relationship. Those are two very different things. Personally, I don't think anyone should use crazy in this day and age at all. And physical abuse is physical abuse. Let's not label it something else. And the trigger warnings for this are: there is a near car crash 2 times, talk of abortion, unwanted impregnation, and emotional abuse in the relationship. So, all that being said, I really enjoyed this. It was so steamy, it was so good, and I was really rooting for the characters. That being said, I'm going to stop ranting about this book, because you should just read it. And I'm gonna maybe pick the next book that I'm going to read. Okay, so I am back with the next book that I read. I finished Learned Reactions by Jace Ellis. This is number 2 in a series, but I don't think you have to read them sequentially. I haven't read the first one, but the second one stood up on its own just fine. So this is a book for those of you that love mutual pining. This had so much mutual pining. So this is about two black men who have been pining over each other in different ways for 20 years. So they were roommates in university. They had a one-night stand and then decided for whatever reason that they would be better off as friends. One of them has been openly in love with the other for the whole time, and the other one has decided he's not good enough for the other one and that he's afraid of putting his heart out there and having his best friend and the love of his life leave him like his parents did. It's very messy. But it all comes to a head when one of the men, his teenage niece, shows up at his door and is asking to stay there with him as she goes through high school. And so he has to go through the adoption process. And there is some miscommunication, and the best friend who happens to be staying with him, the adoption, like the person who's checking to make sure it's a good home and like a good environment, thinks that they are a couple, which would be much better for the application than if he was applying as a single, like soon-to-be father. So they have to do this like fake dating thing, and from the beginning, like they're just so in love with each other. You're just like, can you please just work it out? Can you please just please just get together? So whereas I said Femme Like Her was very hot and steamy and like the sex scenes were like off the charts, this one is definitely one for people who really like a good pine, like a 20-year pine, and their relationship is built on friendship and trust and love and admiration and like respect and just like all of the things. So the more that I think about it, the more that I don't really like some of the elements that were in Femme Like Her, like kind of like the overt miscommunication, misunderstanding trope, and also like the toxic relationships and like the abuse that was mentioned in the book, not between the main characters, but just like by side characters. I don't really like that in my romances, if I'm being honest. So I still give Femme Like Her 4 stars because it was hot, but I'm also giving Learned Reactions 4 stars, and I think I like it a bit better because it didn't have all of those negative aspects. Some of the negative aspects that were talked about in here that might be a trigger or a con for people are that the reason the niece left the grandparents' house is because they're very strict and controlling, and they don't want to allow her to wrestle because she is a girl. And they also, basically, the other child that was with them originally, Trey, he ended up living a year with the uncle as well because they thought his presentation was too femme and that he might be gay. And in the book, it's not clarified whether he is or not. He has a crush on a girl. He does present very feminine, but basically the uncle like really accepts them and loves them, and that is the whole reason why they're fighting to adopt them, so that they can be fully accepted without like that strict and like old school way of thinking. So I really enjoyed this. This is out May 9th. Alright, I am here with an update. I just finished Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon, and it actually took me a few more days than I thought it would. I think it was close to 400 pages, which is longer than I usually read, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about this book. There are a lot of really amazing things about it, and there are a lot of like questionable things about it. So basically we're following Vern, who uses she, her pronouns, and she lives in a kind of cult focused on basically black excellence. However, she is 14 or 15 when she is married off to the like leader of this cult kind of situation, and she becomes pregnant. And as the book opens, Vern is giving birth to twins in the forest after she has run away from the compound, and things go from there. So this is very similar to Skyward Inn, which I read last month, in that I think there were some really amazing aspects, but overall it wasn't perfect for me by any means. So some of the things that I really loved, I loved Vern. So she is very strong, disabled. She has difficulties with her eyesight. She also has chronic pain. She is albino and black. And then there is also great gender diverse representation. So one of her love interests is Lakota Winked, which is two-spirit. And then also there's an emphasis on not labeling Vern's twins one way or the other, or any sort of box whatsoever, in any sort of gender box, as it were, which I thought was very interesting. I don't think I've ever read fiction before that emphasizes that to the extent done in this book. As well as there was such a lack of male gaze throughout the whole book, despite many of the scenes being very focused on pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. There was just not the male gaze, which, as you know, I hate the male gaze with like a burning passion. So for me, I loved it so much. There's also some excellent body horror in here. Body horror is probably one of my favorite things to read in some sort of weird fiction or horror. Body horror, I just love it immensely, and this one is so cool. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil like anything for you. And then it also obviously has kind of modern gothic elements, cult vibes, and the history of black people throughout US history, and just the experimentation and the complete disregard for black bodies, black peoples, black culture. So those were all the things that I loved. Oh, as well as River Solomon is a non-binary black author. However, the cons for me was that a lot of the elements that Solomon was trying to make a point of, such as a lot of the historical elements, a lot of the way people are treated throughout history, the plot and the pacing suffered for the sheer amount of what Solomon was trying to fit into the narrative. I also want to talk about the trigger warnings in here. There are triggers for a lot. So we have triggers for, I'm going to read it from my notes here: racism, homophobia, human experimentation, hauntings, drugging, being tied down to sleep, murder, drug use, torture, animal killing, body horror, trading sex for transportation, shock control, child marriage, gaslighting, mental and physical abuse by parent figures, religious extremism, self-harm, mass murder, lynchings, drowned children, and child abandonment. So there's like a lot going on. And for me, I think any book that's like a huge plus and minus balance is around a 3.5. Okay, hi. Hello. I am here with an update. I finished the last book that I was going to read for this video. So I finished Mouths of Rain, which is the lesbian anthology, and I have so many thoughts about it. So basically, overall, I thought it was brilliant. So this not only has short stories like I originally thought, but it also has a lot of poetry and memoirs and academic essays, as well as thought pieces and fictional short stories. So there is just a lot in here to unpack, and I feel like I really learned a lot about a wide array of topics where the common thread is being black, feminist, and queer, specifically lesbian. Just important things that I hadn't known that I feel like everyone should know. Such as there was a passage where they were talking about Audre Lorde, who I will talk about her more in a few minutes, but Audre Lorde was asking for the ability to teach at different universities depending on the weather, because she was battling, I think, cancer, and the cold was really, really bad for her health, like life-threateningly bad. So she asked if she could teach online during the colder months or teach at another sister university, and the university declined her request. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I can't believe that happened. And basically in the essay, the person who wrote it said, like, if Audre Lorde can't get it, then what chance does anyone else struggling with health problems, like, how do they stand a chance of being able to be accommodated so that their health isn't put in dire risk. And I was just oh my God, that essay made me so angry. I will leave the exact essay title down below. I can't remember it offhand. Other essays talked about the historical context of Black and queer phrases, which I had never heard before, such as bulldagger. Well, I don't think you pronounce the R, bulldagger, and the history behind that. Also history of various Black and queer, especially lesbian women throughout history, such as Amazonians who cut off the breast that impacted the draw of the bow, like such badasses. Also, how Black lesbians are often left out of movements such as like the feminist movement and gay rights. They just don't seem to make the cut into different movements for whatever reason, and they're kind of ostracized and left out of the conversation. And it's just intensely frustrating because they've been integral to different movements, but not accepted by the community that they are helping and championing. And it's just like, why though? Like, it's infuriating. And obviously it's happening because all these people are writing their own voices accounts, and it's just like I knew it was happening, but I hadn't ever spoken to someone who was directly impacted by not being accepted in like those movements, and just hearing the stories was just really eye-opening. Another section that I really loved was about how Afrofuturism reframes Black experiences. And actually, one of my favorite quotes, which I have right here, it's talking about Afrofuturism, and it says, "Afrofuturistic feminism is the business of creating both counterparts and counterfutures and alternative and parallel universes that center Blackness without constantly referencing whiteness." And I just thought that that was a very fascinating concept, that in Afrofuturist works, the absence of whiteness and trying to not rely on societal images and metaphors and things that we rely on, like markers of society that are entrenched in white history, and instead creating or referencing Black history and Black future possibilities, I thought was really, really, really excellent. And then I'm also going to say that Audre Lorde was one of the main takeaways of this for me. I had never read Audre Lorde before. I had heard like of her, but I'd never read her. And like in the very beginning of the anthology, Audre Lorde's poem Woman and then her love poem are in here. These are amazing, and I immediately looked up if my library has Audre Lorde. They don't, so I put in a request because they should, and I really want to read more from her. She's just like completely dynamite. And the only thing that I'm going to say is the con of this anthology is that because there are so many different forms of creation in here, so you have like poetry, memoir, short stories, opinion pieces, you also have really, really complex academic essays, which most of them I was okay with, but some of the really, really complicated ones with really elaborate syntax, honestly, just keeping it 100% honest, it was really hard to get through those. And that's why this final book took me a week to read, whereas the three others took me a week to read all three. I wish I had it physically, and then when I'm reading those academic essays, I could highlight the words that are important. Because for me, if I'm really reading something that's super academic, I really like to highlight and take notes so that I can reference it. Because some of the essays are like over 10 pages long, so it is very complex. That being said, obviously I gave this 4 stars. I really recommend it. Without further ado, I'm going to talk about what I thought the ranking would be and then what the ranking actually is. So, my original thought, if you remember at the beginning of this video, was that I was going to go Sorrowland the best, then Learned Reactions because it's fake dating my best friend, which I love, then Femme Like Her, and then Mouths of Rain last. So, my actual results, I'm going to put Mouths of Rain number 1 actually, with 4 stars, because I just feel like I learned so many things, and heard from so many different voices. And I also found Audre Lorde, who I suspect will become one of my favorite poets. And then number 2, learned reactions. I was right about this one. It is gooey sweet, and it is a best friend fake dating romance between 2 Black men. It was really, really super sweet and lovely. 3rd place, I'm putting Sorrowland with 3.5 stars, because while it wasn't perfect, a lot of it is sticking with me, such as the body horror. Like, the body horror in Sorrowland is one of the best I've read other than Skyward Inn. I feel like if you really like some good body horror that you'll think about later, Skyward Inn by Lia Whiteley and Sorrowland will really just be the perfect pairing to get all weird together. And then that means at the bottom is Femme Like Her, which I originally gave 4 stars. And I'm not sure yet how I feel about it. I might actually downgrade it to a 3.5 star, because when I read it, if you remember, just a little while ago, I thought it was like the hottest thing ever, and it was. The sex scenes were very hot. However, in the 2 weeks since I read it, I don't remember barely anything about it other than that the sex scenes were hot. And in fact, I remember more negative things like an abusive ex and miscommunication, and there just being a lot of problems with the relationship that I just really don't like to see between like partners. So for me, it's somewhere between a 4 and a 3.5. It's still super spicy, but I'm gonna put it at 4th place. So I was wrong. I only got 1 out of 4 right, and I was very pleasantly surprised by how everything went. Please let me know if you're planning on picking any of these up. I have had a fab time trying to predict and then reading these. And yeah, I hope that you are reading some amazing Black literature for Black History Month. Read it all the time, but I especially like to focus on it in Black History Month. And especially, if you can, get some intersections going with queerness, etc. So yeah, I will see you in another video soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye!